All right, here we are again. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalomies, all you homies. This is the Holy Spirit puzzle chart. We got Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and then this is Aviv. See how we got that mat there? That should be an A. Aviv 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. These guys up here, we have Matthew, nigh to Jerusalem, through to the Last Supper. Mark, nigh to Jerusalem, through to the Last Supper. Luke, ascending to Jerusalem, through to the Last Supper. And John starts way down here, then Jesus, 6 days before the Passover, when they get the oil on the feet, through to the Last Supper. So this is the answer sheet. So it may look a little confusing to you, so let's just take it a little bit at a time. Just like you would open your KJV and read it, let's start with Matthew and go to 21. And I have these divided up, but we don't need, we'll just read Matthew so that you can put it down. Matthew 21:1 through 21:17. So let's just go ahead and read that real quick. If I can get this to stay here. And what? Here, does this help? Does that help? Is that a good pointer? Maybe I could use this end. We're reading this here. Yeah, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. And we're going to start reading here. And we're just going to read down. So let's try that. Is that okay for y'all? Can you see 5? Maybe I need to back it up just a smidge. Yeah, and we're right here. Let's go ahead and read that. Yeah. This just might work. This just might work. Yeah, all right, by golly. Except for a mic check on here, I think we'll give this a try. Matthew, we're just going to start off here. Matthew 21:1. We're going to be right here. Let me hold that there while I get Matthew. Yeah, just like you would read in your KJV. This is Matthew 21:1. And when they drew nigh unto Jerusalem, and were come to Bethphage, unto the Mount of Olives, then sent Jesus 2 disciples, saying unto them, Go into the village over against you, and straightway ye shall find an ass tied, and a colt with her. Loose them, and bring them unto me. And if any man say aught unto you, ye shall say, The Lord hath need of them, and straightway he will send them. All this was done that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophet, saying, Tell ye the daughter of Sion, Behold, thy king cometh unto thee, meek, and sitting upon an ass, and a colt, the foal of an ass. And the disciples went and did as Jesus commanded them, and brought the ass and the colt, and put on them their clothes, and they set him thereon. And a very great multitude spread their garments in the way, others cut down branches from the trees, and strawed them in the way. And the multitudes that went before and that followed cried, saying, Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest. And when he was come into Jerusalem, all the city was moved, saying, Who is this? And the multitude said, This is Jesus, the prophet of Nazareth of Galilee. And Jesus went into the temple of God and cast out all them that sold and bought in the temple, and overthrew the tables of the money changers, and the seats of them that sold doves, and said unto them, It is written, My house shall be called the house of prayers, but ye have made it a den of thieves. And the blind and the lame came to him in the temple, and he healed them. And when the chief priests and the scribes saw the wonderful things that he did, and the children crying in the temple, and saying, Hosanna to the Son of David, they were sore displeased, and said unto him, Hearing thou what these say? And Jesus saith unto them, Yeah, have ye never read, Out of the mouth of babes and sucklings thou hast perfected praise? And he left them, and went out of the city into Bethany, and he lodged there. Verse 18, now in the morning, this is another day. So let's continue reading. 21:18. Now in the morning, as he returned into the city, he hungered. And when he saw a fig tree in the way, he came to it, and found nothing thereon but leaves only, and said unto it, Let no fruit grow on thee henceforth forever. And presently the fig tree withered away. Now listen to this next line. This is another day. Since this is the answer sheet, I'll just show you in a minute how we get another day, but this starts another day, verse 20. And when the disciples saw it, they marveled, saying, How soon is the fig tree withered away? Jesus answered and said unto them, Verily I say unto you, if ye have faith and doubt not, ye shall not only do this which is done to the fig tree, but also if ye shall say unto this mountain, Be thou removed, and be thou cast into the sea, it shall be done. And all things, whatsoever ye shall ask in prayer, believing, ye shall receive. And when he was come into the temple, the chief priests and the elders of the people came unto him as he was teaching, and said, By what authority doest thou these things? By what authority? Can you see that little thing there that says, By what authority? This is where they all align. By what authority? By what authority? It's all on the same day. Reading in Matthew, continuing, By what authority doest thou these things? And who gave thee this authority? And Jesus answered and said to them, I also will ask you one thing, which if ye tell me, am likewise will tell you by what authority I do these things. The baptism of John, whence was it? From heaven or of men? And they reasoned with themselves, saying, If we shall say from heaven, he will say unto us, Why do ye not then believe him? But if we shall say of men, we fear the people, for all hold John as a prophet. And they answered Jesus and said, We cannot tell. And he said to them, Neither tell I you by what authority I do these things. But what think ye? And then he goes on to speak for 5 chapters. And there's no chronology in there that we necessarily need to look at. Matthew 22, verse 23, the same day came him the Sadducees, which say that there is no resurrection. Okay, so even there, we're still on the same day, all the way up through Matthew 26:5. Jesus is talking and talking. Well, chapter 24, and Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came to him for to shew him the buildings. And he sat, and then he says, yeah, not one stone. Chapter 23, verse 3, and as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? And Jesus answered and said unto them, and then he talks for the 3 chapters. And then verse 26, let's just start with chapter 26. And it came to pass, when Jesus had finished all these sayings, he said unto his disciples, Ye know that after 2 days is the feast of the Passover, and the Son of Man is betrayed to be crucified. That's why we have this in red here. This is Jesus, 26:5. oh, excuse me, 26:2, he says after 2 days, but then we continue reading, and then by the time 26:5 comes around, it changes. 26:6, way down here, starts a couple days later. Now, when Jesus was in Bethany in the house of Simon the leper, and then we see that that's all verified on this, that it's a different day. Since we have the answer sheet, I'll show you how that is true. But since you already don't see that now, that this is another day, because when the disciples said that they saw it, that's another day. I already have to prove that to you. So let's just stick with the topic. Here he's talking for chapters and chapters about the future events, and then chapter 26, verse 2. Ye know that after 2 days is the feast of the Passover, and the Son of Man is betrayed to be crucified. That's why right here I've got after 2 days, feast of the Passover. This is a small p Passover. There is a big P Passover, which means the entire feast. The feast of the Passover, there is no such a thing except such that there's a feast of unleavened bread. There's the Passover, which is the sacrifice on the 14th that you choose on the 10th. The feast of Passover could be the day that you eat it, or it could be the 10th on the day that you actually choose your lamb. And we'll see that this is, after 2 days, we'll see that it has to be the 7th. That after 2 days is the feast of the Passover, means it's going to be the 10th. And we can see this in Exodus 12. We'll go over that. Excuse me. But this does end after he does say after 2 days is the feast of the Passover. That's Jesus in red words. Okay, Mark only records after 2 days is the feast of the Passover. I have that written in red. Mark records it just that Mark was not an eyewitness. He was like with Peter. Same with Luke. Luke was with Peter, but Matt was actually there, and John was actually there. They were apostles. So Matthew, hearing it, is writing it in your red letter KJV. You're going to see that Matthew's Jesus's words, and then this is just a recounting of it. But I told you, so this is the 7th, because you know that after 2 days it's going to be the 10th. The 10th is when you choose your lamb according to Exodus 12. So I told you that this is another day because this is the fig tree. This is a triumphal entry on 2 donkeys, that the 2 disciples got 2 donkeys, but he rode one, the colt. So as we go down, and if we just pick up our KJV and start reading Matthew, if we just start reading Matthew 21:1, which we did, through these other guys here. Oh, if I can get this thing to go up. So we read through here, and I showed you that this is another day. So let's just go over here to Mark, where Mark 11:20 specifically says, and in the morning. So this we know is another day, and I'll show you that as we read, it just mimics the exact same thing that we kind of saw in Mark, in Matthew, but in the morning. So let's start with Mark 11:20 and see where that takes us. Mark 11:20, and in the morning. Well, if you want, okay, verse 19, and when even was come, he went out of the city. Verse 20, and in the morning, as they passed by, they saw the fig tree dried up from the roots. This was because back here we're going to see that they see the fig tree as well. But in the morning, they saw the fig tree dried. And Peter, calling to remembrance on that day that they saw the roots, saith unto him, Master, behold, the fig tree which thou cursest is withered away. And Jesus saith unto them, Have faith in God, for verily I say unto you, that whoever shall say unto this mountain, Be thou removed. So this is back in Matthew when it says, and when the disciples saw it, we now know, and then he goes into the mountain discussion, and then the what authority, and then after 2 days, we see that this and this are the exact same day, because he does say by what authority, and then for 3 chapters he speaks the eschatology that we all love to quote so much. And then he says after 2 days is the feast of Passover and of unleavened bread. Remember how I said on the 10th actually starts the feast, or the 12-day spring event? Over here Jesus says after 2 days is the feast of the Passover. Here Mark is adding a little bit more information. After 2 days, Jesus said after 2 days is the feast of the Passover and of unleavened bread. So that's nice, so that we see that this is another day that aligns with, hey, when the disciples said, so this is another day. So this day that I said, hey, the fig tree at the disciples is another day, and I'll prove it to you. Yes, Mark proves that to us. Let's back all the way up to 11:12. Well, let's hit up 11:11. 11:11 is funny. And Jesus entered into Jerusalem and into the temple, and when he had looked round about upon all things, and now the eventide was come, he went out unto Bethany with the 12. Verse 12, and on the morrow, when they were come from Bethany, he was hungry. On the morrow, when he was come from Bethany. Why do I have a skip in here? Oh, we can't even see up that high. From 11:11, he enters Jerusalem, looks around, eventide comes, and he goes off to Bethany. Coincidentally, the next day we have a Bethany triumphal entry. Remember when we read it, it said he had already been to Bethphage, and he nigh to Jerusalem, near Bethany, already been to Bethphage. At the Mount of Olives, he sent forth 2 of his disciples. So anyway, the reason I have a skip on this day here is that because in 11:11, Mark 11:11, it says, and Jesus entered in the descent, and now the eventide was come. Okay, if eventide was come, we're already looking at another day. And so anything after that, it's going to essentially be another day, but it does continue. Now the eventide was come, it's turning into another day. It could be the other day already or not, but we'll see. He went out unto Bethany with the 12, and on the morrow. Now it doesn't say now in the morning. That's kind of good. In the morning could have been either way. It could have been in the morning here, or it could have been in the morning because this is another day in the morning. But since it says on the morrow, I like that, because clearly we're already, after he goes off to eventide and he goes to Bethany, it says on the morrow. It literally has to be another. You have to, that entire day is gone, because you're already on that day when he says, you're already on the 5th when he says on the morrow. So on the morrow from the 5th is the 6th. Which aligns coincidentally with verse 12. And on the morrow, when they were come from Bethany, he was hungry, and seeing a fig tree afar off, having leaves, again with the leaves. See how he said leaves here, and then he says leaves here, but when Peter remarks, he says, look, it's dried up by the roots. Matthew says the whole tree, but Mark says it's dried up by the root. And seeing a fig tree, if haply he might find anything thereon, and when he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, for the time of figs was not yet. And Jesus answered and said unto it, no man eat any fruit on it. Here at where we at? Verse 14. And his disciples heard it. And they come to Jerusalem, and Jesus went into the temple and began to cast out them that sold and bought in the temple, and overthrew the tables of the money chambers and the seats of them that sold doves, and would not suffer that any man should carry any vessel through the temple. This is a different event than this table. Remember, he overturned the tables here. He went into Jerusalem. He had a triumphal entry into Bethany, walked into Jerusalem. Now in the morning, he was coming back to Jerusalem, saw a fig tree, cursed it. Well, this guy is saying on that day he went in and overthrew tables. Excuse me, down here. Where am I at? Mark, right. He would not suffer any man to vessel. So when he's overthrowing the tables here, he cast out he overthrew the tables of the money changers, because the tables of the money changers had money on it. He overturned the seats of those that sold doves, because on the tables of those that sold doves would have been vessels of birds, the doves. Those that he overturned the seats of those that sold doves instead of the table that had the vessels of doves on it. But look what happens here when we are reading in verse 16 in Mark, and he would not suffer that any, it's a different day. And here he stayed and he taught. He healed the blind and the lame, and the Pharisees ask him, and he says, hey, don't you know by the babes, scripture is perfected. But the next day he comes back, he overturns the tables of the money chambers, he overturns the seats of those that sold doves, and he adds, and verse 16, and would not suffer that any man should carry any vessel through the temple, because they're going to be carrying the dove sellers are going to grab the vessels of the doves and run away. Because he overthrew the seats of them. Okay, now they're running, and they ran away with their vessels of doves. These guys, the money changers, picked up their money. But the next day, he did the same thing, overturned the tables of the money chambers, the seats of those that sold doves. But then he didn't stay and heal and comment to the Pharisees about the babes. What he did say was he did not suffer any man to carry a vessel through the temple. And verse 17, and he taught, saying unto them, is it not written, my house shall be called of all nations the house of prayer, but ye have made it a den of thieves. Verse 17 again, and he taught, saying unto them, it is written, my house shall be, he taught. Okay, back here when on a different day when he overthrew the money chambers, Matthew's words are, he said, he didn't teach them. It's two completely different Greek words in the interlinear. Here he said, you have made my house a den. So once we see their different days, we can see that there are differences within. We don't look at the differences within and say, oh, this must be a different day. That's like, oh, I didn't even consider that when I tried figuring this stuff out. So that's why I have a gap here, because this can literally be at eventide. After eventide was coming, he was in Bethany. The next line is, and on the morrow, instead of like in the morning, even if it was in the morning, like I say. But this does align with, as we just read in our KJV, Matthew 21:1. We come down, we see after 2 days that Jesus says after two, by what authority? We also see that aligns with what authority over here, and we just backtrack it and see this is a different day. And then if you want to move this down, fine, but you're going to have problems with that. That's why there's a different day there. This is one line. This is Jesus going into Jerusalem and nobody saw him. So let's go all the way up here to Mark 11, 1-10. And let me try to get my camera to stay that high, and I'll read the verses for you. But you'll notice that I'm going to read Mark, but Luke has the exact same 10 verses. If you read that and you read that, you won't even know the difference. So let's just read Mark 11, 1-10 to show you. As we're going backwards here, and then we're gonna go across and down. Okay, so Mark 11, 1-10. And when they came nigh to Jerusalem, unto Bethphage, literally, I don't know why you think he's doing a Jerusalem triumphal entry here, just reading that line. He was not in Jerusalem. He was nigh to Jerusalem. And the very next line, let me read it again. Chapter 11, Mark, verse 1. And when they came nigh to Jerusalem, unto Bethphage and Bethany, at the Mount of Olives, he sendeth forth two of his disciples, and saith unto them, Go your way into the village over against you. And as soon as ye be entered into it, ye shall find a colt tied, whereon never man sat. Loose him and bring him. And if any man say unto you, Why do you do this? And shall say that the Lord hath need of him, and straightway he will send him hither. And they went their way and found the colt tied by the door without, in a place where two ways met, and they loose him. And certain of them that stood there said unto them, What do ye, loosing the colt? And they said unto them, Even as Jesus had commanded, and they let him go. And they brought the colt to Jesus, and cast their garments on him, and he sat upon him. And many spread their garments in the way, and others cut down branches off the trees, and strawed them in the way. And they that went before, and they that followed, cried, saying, Hosanna, blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. Blessed be the kingdom of our father David, that cometh in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest. And then verse 11, and Jesus entered into Jerusalem, and that's a different day because we show that he entered into Jerusalem. These 10 verses and these align word for word, and they diverge right here. And they said, Blessed be the kingdom of our father David, that cometh in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest. And Jesus entered into Jerusalem and into the temple, and when he had looked around about upon all things. Okay, so you see that the divergence is here. What is this? Let's just read this. We're done with Mark. We might as well bump on over to Luke, because we're going to read down anyway, that these are the exact same words. Matthew, Mark, Luke. Luke what? 19:28. He's getting a donkey that's never been ridden. And it's Aviv 3. This is a Sabbath. The donkey that has never been ridden, he can ride on the Sabbath. That's the only kind of a donkey that you can ride on the Sabbath per the law, if you're written Torah observant. So Luke 19:28. Matthew, Mark, Luke. And when he had thus spoken, he went before, ascending up to Jerusalem. And it came to pass, when he was come nigh to Bethphage and Bethany, at the mount called the Mount of Olives, he sent two of his disciples, saying, Go ye into the village over against you, in the which at your entering ye shall find a colt tied, whereon yet never man sat. Loose him, and bring him hither. And if any man ask you, Why do you loose him? Thus shall ye say unto him, Because the Lord hath need of him. And they that were sent went their way, and found even as he had said unto them. And as they were loosing the colt, the owners thereof said unto them, Why loose ye the colt? And they said, The Lord hath need of him. And they brought him to Jesus, and they cast their garments upon the colt, and they set Jesus thereon. And as he went, they spread their clothes in the way. That's why I have garments written down there. This is where they now diverge. Remember, it says in Mark, and Jesus entered into Jerusalem. Right here at verse 36, it ends. Verse 37 is where we pick up. And when he was come nigh, remember how it was nigh? Okay. And when he was come nigh, even now at the descent of the Mount of Olives, or is it even now, like another day? We'll just say even now at the descent. This sounds like he's taking this donkey and riding it down and going to go into Jerusalem. No, he had his triumphal entry here. They had their garments that spread in the way as he went. Where's it at here? And it came to pass, and they were sent, and as they loosed, and they said, and they brought him, and he sat there, and they set Jesus thereon, and as he went, they spread their clothes in the way. Where did he go? To Jerusalem, to look around, and when eventide was come, he went out to Bethany with the 12, had his triumphal entry there. Luke picks it up. Even now, at the descent of the Mount of Olives. He's just He's continuing his chronology correct. There's no lie here. He doesn't have to say, oh, well, I'm going to skip a day. He's just saying, and as he went, many spread their garments in the way. And then verse 37, and when he was come nigh, over here. And when Jesus was nigh to Jerusalem, ascending to Jerusalem, except here it says, even now at the descent, when he was come nigh. But anyway, I'll show you how it's the same day anyway. It doesn't, I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but I'll show you how this is the same day as this anyway. Even now at the descent of the Mount of Olives, the whole multitude of the disciples began to rejoice and praise God with a loud voice for all the mighty works that they had seen, saying, Blessed be the King that cometh in the name of the Lord. What again? Over here, blessed be the King. I'm still reading Luke. Let's go back. Luke, where is it? Oh, he doesn't even say that in Luke. Okay, so verse 38. Blessed be the King that cometh in the name of. But he's on his way. He's in Jerusalem, going to Jerusalem now. Blessed be the King that cometh in the name of the Lord. Peace in heaven. You know, whatever. He's approaching the city. If he's going across the Kidron Valley Bridge, he's going to pause here and weep. So he's approaching Jerusalem. And don't be confused, it's the triumphal entry. So as he's approaching this Jerusalem, before like zip Jerusalem, blessed be the King that cometh in the Bethany. But he's at Bethany, even out the descent of Bethany. He's leaving Bethany, going to Jerusalem, saying, Blessed be the King that cometh in the name of the Lord, peace in heaven, glory in the highest. And some of the Pharisees from among the multitude said unto him, Master, rebuke thy disciples. And he answered and said unto them, I tell you that if these should hold their peace, the stones would immediately cry out. There's a Habakkuk 2:11 reference here, but the stones that would cry out would be the stones of witness that the stones of witness that Joshua put up at the entrance after crossing Jordan, that he was supposed to at the entrance of the gates to the city as well. But those stones were witnessing the Torah, all of the Torah, which prophesied of a promised prophet. So the promised prophet has come, and these people are saying, blessed be the King that come in the name of the Lord, quoting Psalm 118:26, that come in the name of the Lord, peace in heaven and glory in the highest. And they're saying, telling him, the Pharisees are telling him, Master, rebuke thy disciples. And he said, I tell you to hold their peace, the stones would immediately cry out. The stones would witness. And when he was come near the city, see, if you thought this was the triumphal entry and such, when he comes near this and beheld the city, he wept over it, saying, if thou hadst known, even thou, at least in this thy day, the things which belong unto thy peace, but now they are hid from thy eyes. For the day shall come upon thee that thine enemies shall cast a trench about thee, and compass thee round, and keep thee in on every side, and shall lay thee even with the ground, and thy children within thee, and they shall not leave in thee one stone upon another, because thou knewest not the time of thy visitation. And I will add, they did not know the time of the visitation of their Messiah, the promised prophet. And he went, so the next line, verse 45, and he went into the city and began to cast out them that sold therein and that bought. That's why it aligns with this casting out. But look at verse 45, before verse 45, where he went in to the temple, when he is weeping at the city in verse 42 Well, 39, yeah, in verse 42, where he's weeping before the city. Look how that aligns with Matthew. When Matthew, the people in Jerusalem, saw him coming into Jerusalem, they said they were moved. What were they moved about? That he was coming in on a donkey? He wasn't even going into Jerusalem. He was going into Bethany on a donkey at this point, and he walking into Jerusalem. And they're saying, and the people were moved. They were moved because this guy over here wrote down that he wept before while he was near. And I'm not using that like, oh, so that must be the same day. No, I showed you. We read Matthew. This is one day. This is another day. And then the disciples said, where am I at here? Oh, hell, Sticky Peculiar, man. How long you been in the house, brother? I'm gonna stop my thing right now and look at you. What are you doing here? Let's see. Oh my goodness, have you been talking for a while? Oh man, I'm so sorry. Please, I just want to eat my sauerkraut burger. Yeah, exactly. Love this stick. It's got the yeah, smack of originally prepared popper. Yeah, he does. That's exactly where I get. Jesus is just all right with me, but what would Moses write? How do all these pointies relate to the Ten Commandments? Inquiring sticky minds want to know. Oh, this is just to show that the Last Supper was on the 11th, and that there was three different donkey rides, not one triumphal. And there was one triumphal entry of donkey ride into Jerusalem that John records. Then Jesus 6 days before the Passover, that's the 8th. 6 days before the 14th is the 8th. That's the beauty of these guys saying by what authority, by what authority, by what authority is the 7th. And the only tie-in is the chick that does the oil to the feet, to the head, to the feet one day because she's at Lazarus's, but she dumps it on his head the next day because all these three guys say he's in Bethany at Simon the leper's. And at Simon the leper's is where Judas said the 300. So when John says, oh, then Judas said 300, which is verse 4, that was the next day. We know that's the next day because we got these three witnesses. This one says that it was the 8th. And then after this, all of these guys say what? Now the first day of the feast whatever, now the first day. And then this one says now the first day. These are all talk on the next day. John's down here on the next day. But yeah, we're just showing, so we read just like you would read in your KJV. You start at Matthew, only 21:1 through 17 is one day. This is another, and this is another. Then we came over here to show that all these align. They don't align at the donkey rides. They all align at after 2 days. And so we come down and read this, and we came back up showing that there's two different days for the fig tree. And we went all the way up to Mark and Luke have 10 verses of the exact same reading, and this is where they diverge, so there must be a different day. And now we're just going over this. But Luke, who did promise a chronology, goes so fast. You got to be careful on what you're reading. So here he is saying, oh, Jesus, just before he goes into Jerusalem, weeps. And then over here, Matthew says, oh, and all the people of Jerusalem were moved. He didn't even do anything over here in Matthew. He's just like, oh, he got a couple donkeys at Bethany. And all the people, they didn't hear anything about the crying. Let me get caught up on these messages. God, we miss you so sticky. What's her name? Sharon G. Is in the hospital. Low breath, trouble breathing, maybe. She seems to be stabilized, maybe in there for a couple more. I don't know how much longer. But she told me to call you, and she told me to tell you, but I can't call you. I don't have any phone service. How do all these pointies relate to the Ten Commandments? Crime minds, this all too complicated. Love you, Nanya, but any audience moved on. Money changers suck. Y'all just check out the James Tabor translate text. It translates to approximately Jewish priests are satanic vampire bloodsuckers or something like that. So true. Judaism in particular, not Jews. Okay, so I may have exaggerated just a tad. The actual vid is from the James Tabor series, Lost in Translation. I think I know that. The vid is lost in translation. The Jerusalem temple as a den of ravenous wild beasts. Yes, it was. They had the Passover lambs there. That's not how you do it. You take them home. Remember Keith Johnson interviewing Yehuda Glick? Yehuda said on the original Passover, they would have tied that lamb to their bed on the 10th and kept it up for 4 days, showing it off to passing by Egyptians. Hey, this is your God, one of your gods, the lamb, and we're going to kill it in 3 days, in 2 days, in 1 day. They would have been showing it off. Yeah. But yeah, thanks for stopping by, Sticky. But all right, so we left off with these guys, Luke recording that as he gets nigh, he weeps, and then Matthew records, and all the people were moved. So let's pick, and he says, and this does align. Remember how on this day, where's my pointer? Remember on this day, where is it at? He casts out, he said a den of thieves. He taught a den of thieves on this day. Luke also says that he said, you have made my house a den of thieves. So the said versus the taught does align. That just adds like, hey, that's the same day. But let's go ahead and continue reading from that Luke, 45, I think we were at, 1945. Verse 41, what is it? Up here where he's going to go weeping. And when he was come near the city, he beheld the city and wept over it. And then verse 45, and he went into the temple, clearly in Jerusalem, like Jerusalem proper, the Temple Mount. He went into the temple and began to cast out them that sold therein and them that bought, saying unto them, it is written, my house is the house of prayer, but ye have made it a den of thieves. And he taught daily in the prayer. So we're just gonna see here that it says, like, it doesn't really give any more chronology information, but we'll read it. And he taught them daily in the temple, but the chief priests and the scribes and the chief of the people sought to destroy him, and could not find what they might do. Excuse me, for all the people were very attentive to hear him. And so that ends chapter 19. Chapter 20. Chapter 20 starts out. It's gonna have to align, right? So number one, that's why we move it all the way down here. But number two, chapter 20 starts out, and it came to pass. So that could be that day, and it came to pass the next day, and it could be way down here, and it came to pass what? Way down there. But verse 20, we see, since this is the answer sheet, we already know this is where it goes. I'll just read it for you, chapter 20. And it came to pass that on one of those days, as he taught in the temple and preached the gospel, the chief priests and the scribes came unto him with the elders and spake unto him, saying, tell us, by what authority doest thou things? Again, here we go with the whole what authority. But don't forget, at this point, he's in the temple. Over here, he's already left the temple. And the temple itself, he's still on the Temple Mount, but he's walking away. He eventually gets to the Mount of Olives. He eventually gets to the garden on the Mount of Olives, and he eventually gets to the secluded place in the garden on the Mount of Olives. But for right now, Luke over here is speaking about him at the temple. That's why when you look at eschatology, you don't read Luke. What's going to happen during our time, you don't read Luke, because he's talking about 68 AD. Matthew and Mark are talking about after he walked away from the temple. Matthew and Mark are talking about the very end times, eschatology. That's why all your eschatology teachings are Mark and Luke, Matthew and Mark. They're almost identical, but you do need to read them, because you will see differences, just like we saw differences up here. Hey, he's walking, he weeps before Jerusalem on the Kidron Valley Bridge, or wherever he weeps, whatever gate he was going in. But he was coming from Bethany. He's either going to go in the Lion's Gate or the East Gate. There's only, I don't know, he could go all the way around to the Dung Gate, the Damascus Gate up north. No, it doesn't specify, but he's near Jerusalem at this point when he's weeping. And then it's just hilarious that Matthew records, oh, all the people were moved. When he's coming in, all the people were moved, saying, who is this? And they don't say, oh, this is Jesus, the prophet of Nazareth. No, they say, this is Jesus, the prophet of Nazareth of Galilee. the prophet. Deuteronomy 18, promised prophet. So we read, where did we go? We started at Matthew, we went all the way down, came back up to Mark. We saw these guys were the same, came down, this does align, and then we get to where they have, what authority. Jesus' words after 2 days is the feast of the Passover. Mark recording Jesus' words, but he didn't record, he didn't put them in red like these are the exact words. He just this is Mark's inference. After 2 days is the feast of Passover and of unleavened bread. And then what does Luke say in verse after the what authority, which means it's all on the same day? What does Luke have to say about that? He says, and the feast of unleavened bread drew nigh, which is called the Passover with a capital P. Goodness gracious. The feast of the Passover and unleavened bread, the feast of unleavened bread, which is called the Passover with a capital P. My goodness, what the heck is going on? It's the 10th. We have in Exodus 12, you choose your lamb on the 10th. That's when Passover starts. That's when Matzah Fest starts. That's when the Feast of Unleavened Bread starts. On the 10th, you choose your lamb. You take it out of the herd. You bring it into your home. You take it out, it says 2 times. You keep it up, it says 2 times. You keep it up. You keep it up in your house. It's less than a year old. It's a yearling. It's the cutest thing in the whole wide world. Your kids are going to fall in love with it. You're going to groom it. You're going to clean up its poo. You're going to feed it water and food. Or maybe not, because you have to roast it whole. You don't need a temple. There was no temple in Exodus. There's for the first Passover, the very first Passover. You don't need a temple. You don't even need to know how to carve up a lamb, like to skin it and get it into its separate parts and cook it, because you roast it whole with its poo, its head. That's why Michael Rood, when he does Passover, if it's got its poo in it, you're going to probably stand that lamb upright so that as it cooks, the poo doesn't get in the meat. What? There's a geniusness next to this. If you have an upright lamb, this is totally significant of Jesus's cross. So here we have. So this is the 7th. So okay. Let me move my camera. All right, where are we at on this bad boy? Except for that none you biz sticking in the way. Well, that's the 11th. We don't need. So they don't align at the donkey rides. They all align at what authority, what authority, what authority. Eschatology, somewhat eschatology. So what does John have to say? John, then Jesus, 6 days before the Passover, small p. Oh, I just convinced you. Passover starts on the 10th. So Jesus, 6 days before the Passover, that must be the 4th. No, John. Oh, he's out in left field there. All these guys are called the Synoptic Gospels. They're all cool, but John's out in left field. So when I say then Jesus 6 days before the Passover is the 8th, because Passover, the sacrifice, Passover means sacrifice. That's why I'm pointing out that Luke has a capital P Passover for like the entire 12-day event. Jesus himself says after 2 days is the feast of the Passover. That very well could be the 14th, because the 15th, because the feast of the sacrifice is the 15th when you eat it. So that very well could be the 13th. But this also adds and of unleavened bread. So that's at least going to have to be the 15th minus 2 days, the 13th. And here, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which is called the Passover with a capital P, if you put them all together, it has to be the 10th. There's no getting around it. Then Jesus, 6 days before the Passover, like the sacrifice, is the 8th, because we see the oil on the feet. He's at Lazarus's. These guys down here have him at Simon the leper's. In Bethany, still, but he's at Simon the leper's when Judas says 300. John says Judas says 300 after the oil of the feet. That doesn't mean he's lying if it's a different day. It just means that then is a chronological term, just like and in the morning and on the morrow. Now in the morning, you know that's a different day. When the first line of 21:18 is now in the morning, you know that's a different day. So, but anyway, this guy's here. So this is the 8th. So let's read John 1-3 real quick, and we'll try to wrap, because it's gonna show that we're gonna end up at the Last Supper. The Last Supper is gonna end up being the 10th, going into the 11th. The Last Supper is gonna be the 11th. If it's at night, if it's another day, the Last Supper is the 11th. The Last Supper, the Last Supper, the Last Supper, the Last Supper is the 11th. That kills Roman Catholicism. Their core Eucharist is the 15th. This kills Protestantism by proxy. They insist that he took our tone, regular leavened bread, and that the Last Supper was the 14th. This proves the Last Supper was the 11th, the 10th going into the 11th. If it was at nighttime, it would be the 11th. Do you guys got a problem with killing Roman Catholicism? Eucharist? Your communion is probably a little bit different than their Eucharist. They literally eat Jesus's body, literally drink his blood. Protestants just do it symbolically because, they think it was the day before. Now what are y'all going to do when you find out it's the 11th? The 10th going in the 11th. We better read John here real quick before people start hanging up on me and thinking I'm crazy. Chapter 12. Then Jesus, 6 days before the Passover, small p, came to Bethany where Lazarus, which had been dead, whom he now raised from the dead. There they made him a supper. These two guys have him at a meat, a different Greek word. This is a supper. This is at meat. It does sound like it's more of a, well, I won't go into it. Then they made him supper, and Martha served, but Lazarus was one of them that sat at the table with them. What do you mean, but Lazarus? Because he stank. Yeah, they're trying to eat, and Lazarus stank. So Martha took a pound of ointment of spikenard, very costly, and anointed the feet of Jesus. Do you think she used the whole pound? Okay, I go to Walmart Super Duper and get a giant 1-gallon shampoo, and I shampoo my hair. I bought a gallon of shampoo and shampooed my hair. Do you think I used the entire shampoo? You would if you saw that Judas said, why are you doing that? It could have been used for 3. But no, we are going to read them all together, all at once, instead of individually. This here, verse 3, then Mary took a pound of ointment of spikenard, very costly, anointed the feet of Jesus, wiped his feet with her hair. I've got long hair. When I put oil like in my hair and it gets on your hands, you can't just get hot water and rinse that oil off. It's a very special oil. You can put it. You might as well rub your hand all over your skin and get it off, or in your hair to get it off of your hands. Put it to good use. You just keep running. When my hands are done putting oil in my hair, like an expensive oil or something, and I try to rinse it, you can't rinse it off. Hot water, Dawn soap, you can't, wash it away like that. You put it in your hair. You make good use of it. And wiped his feet with her hair, and the house was filled with the odor of the ointment, taking away the odor of Lazarus. Then saith one of his disciples, Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, which should betray him? Why was not this ointment sold for 300 pence and given to the poor? John's not lying. It's just a different day. Then said Judas, And this is when we see that he said it. At Simon's. And we know it's another day because it says, now the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the disciples said, where should we go to prayer for the Passover? And here in Mark, and the first day of unleavened bread, when they killed the Passover, they said, where should we go to prepare to eat the Passover? And in Luke, then came the day of unleavened bread, when the Passover must be killed. Then came the day of unleavened bread, the 15th, when the Passover must be killed, the 14th. You see how it's not, you got to put them all together? It's the 10th. This is the 10th per Exodus 12. When you choose your lamb, take it out of the herd, take it home, keep it up for days. At the Last Supper, they did not have a lamb. Judas saw this and said, oh, you're a fake prophet. Jesus says, go do what you got to do and hurry up, man. I don't like this. I don't want to die on the cross. So then I might change my mind. So hurry up. So verse 5, this is said not because he cared for the poor, but because he was a thief and had the bag and bare what was put therein. Then said Jesus, let her alone. Against the day of my burying hath she kept this. That's funny. If she kept it for the day of his burial, why is she breaking it open here to do his feet? Oh, because he's been walking a long way. No, because Lazarus stunk. You can raise the dead an hour after they're dead. It's like Pet Cemetery. You don't wait a day. You don't, these near-death experiences, you don't see them 3 days later. I've seen them at the funeral, like, oh, the lady was there and all of a sudden she sat upright and she lived for 45 more years. But Lazarus, that's the whole point of life. After 4 days, okay, this is not the resurrection. I can raise you, Lazarus, but this is not the resurrection where you're going to have a glorified body. You're going to die again. You stink right now. You're probably going to go kill yourself or start investing in spikenard of oil of spikenard. Verse 11, John 4, verse 1, verse 8, actually. For the poor always ye have with you. He's quoting the Old Testament there. But me ye have not always. Much people of the Jews therefore knew that he came there, and they came not for Jesus' sake only, but that they might see Lazarus. That's why he's raised from the dead. Because back here he says, you're going to have to eat my flesh and drink my blood if you want to save the king. In fact, he said that here. He said back at Matthew, he says here, you won't see me again till you say Baruch atah Yahovah Hashem, whatever, blessed is he that, and he does that on the triumphal entry of John on the 8th, where the people say, oh, blessed is he that comes in the name of the Lord. It's not some future like our future event. But anyway, he does the oil on the feet, and then Judas says 300. Well, I better finish up here. Verse 9, verse 10. But the chief priests consulted that they might put Lazarus also to death, because that by reason of him, many of the Jews went away and believed on Jesus. On the next day, that's here, 12:12, on the next day. That's why we have another day there. We have another day here from here, because like I said, at the time that John says in verse 4, then Judas said we could have sold it for 300. We know that he said it at Simon's. Also, this is at Lazarus at a supper. This is at Simon's at a dinner, at meat. This is Simon's at a meat. I don't think this one says, it just says that Judas there was an opportunity for Judas. So then when we know that, then Judas said that on the oil, and on the next day, so on this next day, we can align this with Luke 22:7, knowing that then came the day of unleavened bread, because everything they say on here all aligns with everything that is on the next day in John. Remember here, when they get, in fact, I think these are, remember he sends two, Matthew says, now the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the disciples came to him, where should we prepare the Passover? I think he tells them something. And then I think he tells them something different here. I think this was a ruse for people that were following him that wanted to kill him. they follow these two disciples. Oh, that's where he's going to go spend Passover. And then some other spies follow these two guys. Oh, that's where he's going to keep Passover. And then more spies follow this guy's and says, oh, so I'm just saying, I think these are decoy, like, hey, they're like three different locations. But he eventually did have to go to one. But no, there's no lamb. They prepared everything. Oh, remember, everything's prepared. But no, Judas, when Judas left, some of the disciples thought, oh, he's going to get something for Passover. It very well, there's not many things you need for Passover. Bitter herbs, a child to ask some questions, who was probably John, quite frankly. I think he was like 12 years old, in my opinion. That's why he lived so long. A lamb. But no, if Jesus is going to the master, some guy's house who's already chosen a lamb, and he's just going to be like a guesser because a lamb can feed a lot of people, he's still going to have to be there on the 10th. Jesus, to participate in that and be kept up in the house with him also. Anyway, so that's John on the next day. Okay, I hope that helps. I just wanted to try to get a real quick, goodness gracious, what teaching out there to get because I want to do the screen sideways, and I want to check my microphone and such. And I also wanted to read it. It's hard. You can't put when I put it in a vertical scroll form, you can't just sit there and read. But I wanted you to notice, now in the morning, on the morrow, when the disciples saw it, and in the morning, all these chronological terms. And then people say the gospel author's account of the Passion Week was not chronological. I just thought I would check it out. I didn't have any expectations. Excuse me. I didn't have any expectations. I put, if it failed, I wouldn't have cared. Because I went into it thinking that they were just four different witness accounts, and you're going to have four different witness accounts on anything, on a car wreck. You got four different witnesses. Oh, it was a 2-door, it was a 4-door. These guys say it was green. These guys say it was 4-door. You put them all together. But when I started to put them all together, it's like, and I saw the different days, I'm like, oh my gosh, what happened on this exact same day? It's like these four gospel authors are on the Dick Cavett show or the Johnny Carson show, and they're all four there, and they say, hey, and they just start talking. And Mark and Luke, where's my chart? Mark and Luke start to talk first, and they're speaking the exact same words. And then Mark goes off on when Jesus did the Jerusalem sightseeing spy trip. He was sightseeing. He saw all the sights of Absalom's tomb. I bet he went to. And then Matthew picks up, and he's on the Dick Cavett show, and he just starts talking about this. But then Luke picks up on, remember how I subdivided it up? What happened each day, and then within each day, different things happen within each day. So I didn't care if I failed. It's like, oh, okay, it's four different witness accounts. It was written. Mark and Luke are not direct apostles. They were apostles of Paul. Matthew and John were direct apostles. They heard and said everything. Matthew was written in Hebrew. Well, they are all written in Hebrew, but we have the Hebrew Matthew, like, readily available. The other ones are hard to find. I was very well prepared. There was only one thing I wanted to do, and that was be true to the genius of Rood, Michael Rood, pointing out the one wild donkey, the donkey that had never been rid, the one wild ass, the donkey that had never been rid. Rood postulated that it was the Sabbath, but he said it was the 10th, when the time that you choose your lamb, that Jesus had his triumphal entry, and that he thinks but no, it happened. And I wanted to stay, I wanted that to be part of the story. That was the only bias I had at the time that I tried to put it together. And believe me, I went through, your Bible and you open up Matthew 21:1, you open up Mark 11:1, and you flip back and forth, and then you look at Luke, and you're trying to figure out that the donkey ride is not matching, and then you got John, and you can't do it. Pretty soon, I'm tearing pages out of Bibles. I've got a zillion Bibles. I'm tearing pages because I don't have a copy machine to print the text. I started writing it out. I'm like, oh my God, you can't even flip back and forth. And I started to write out the text exactly. And when it wouldn't align, I would have to do it over again. So I would have to write the entire Matthew 21:1 through 18 over and over and over. Pretty soon you're cutting out things. Pretty soon I'm cutting out the Bible. Oh, Mike's cutting out his Bible. No, these Bibles were misprints. These Bibles went from page, if you open them up, it went from page 1 to 300, and then it went from page 700 down to 301, and then it picked up at page 701 and went on to like page 1200 or something. These were, so yeah, don't be freaking out. Eventually, once I got it in the small form, I was able to copy, paste, print in landscape view 38 font, paste together in tape together on the backside, and make a vertical scroll of Matthew, make a vertical scroll of Mark, left hand justified verses, Luke and John, put them all together on my floor, 12 feet by 12 feet on my floor, and look at them. That whole Matthew 21, 24 through 26:5, it's all eschatology. It's longer than heck. You can combine that and just know that there's no chronology in there, that he's just speaking consistently for a long time. And you do the same thing with Mark. And now my chart is on the floor, 12 feet by 12 feet. Let's make a chart, like what happened each day. So do I make a calendar chart like you have Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, however they work. And then the next, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Saturdays, and then you have the dates. Or should I do it like this, like the dates on the side and then each Matthew, Mark? So I didn't know how to do it like that. So I figured that out. But I wanted to stay true to that Mark and Luke's one wild ass was specifically because it was a Sabbath. And when I started doing this, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's at least 2 different donkey rides. I did Matthew and John right away. That was easy. And Mark and Luke are like, what's going on with here? And I had to keep backing them up. It's like, oh, this happened way before this. This happened before this. This happened before this. Finally, it's like, I am not going to back this up to the third. I cannot, if I want to stick to this is the Sabbath of the 10th, the third, the Sabbath of the third, I am not going to back up Mark and Luke. Nobody. That's ridiculous for it to be a week prior. There's no way there was a donkey ride a week. I said, I'll try it. Excuse me. I wanted to hold true to Rude and give him the, hey, but he could turn out to be wrong. Maybe this was the 11th, maybe this was on the 4th or the 5th or the 6th. But I had to keep backing it up. And I finally, it said, I'm going to have to back it up all the way to there. I doubt it. I'm like, no, I'm not going to back it all the way up to the 3rd. And I thought to myself, just try it. But I was saying very strongly, I'm not going to back it up to the 3rd. And a voice, a small whisper behind me, a softly spoken whisper, 100% the Holy Spirit. That's why I say this is not from me. This is from the Holy Spirit. I give no credit to this. That's why you see Nunya Biz down here. Where's that at? I can't even point to Nunya Biz. That's why I have Nunya Biz. It's none of your business what my name is. I ain't taking any credit for this whatsoever. This is direct from the Holy Spirit. When I thought to myself, wow, do I have to back it all the way up to that previous 3rd Sabbath, the Aviv 3rd, and a little voice, because I love Rude so much, I want it to be true. But that's stupid. It's so far. And the voice behind me said, and whispered in my ear, trust Rude on this. So I plugged it into the formula and I started looking. It's like, wow, these guys speak the exact same words for 10 verses. They diverge at this point. Mark 11:11 speaks nothing of overturning tables, nothing of, hey, by what authority, but it does later. That's why I'm saying why, oh my gosh, I had to back it up. I said, I'll just try it. I'll just try it. And it fit. And I danced, and it was a puzzle piece that snapped in, that you could hear around the world. The snap heard around the world. That puzzle piece, when you try to make one go in, you know they don't go. But after a couple drinks, or you're partying back in the day, you try to do the puzzle. But boy, if you're straight up sober and you look for this one piece and it's apart like a, and it snaps in there, there's not a long, there's a snap. When that snapped in, and I put it, and I read, this all aligns, and it's all perfectly meshed. Mark picks up on what Luke is saying, Luke is picking up on Mark saying. The chick, when Jesus says, verily, verily, I say to you, wheresoever this gospel is preached, that which the woman has done will be spoken of as a memorial to you. Verily, verily, we know that means very important. But what's the importance? She's the linchpin. If she did not do that to his feet that one day, and John reporting that it was on the 8th, if she did not do the head the next day, we would not know the dates. We would know that there was different days, and we might have an idea, but without her, we would not know the dates. She is the linchpin, the key pin, the kingpin, the key. Therefore, Jesus said, verily, verily, I say to you, wheresoever this gospel is. Well, when's the last time somebody preached the gospel to you and they spoke about this woman? Exactly. So anyway, this voice behind me, soft spoken, the Holy Spirit said, trust root on this. I plugged it in. It snapped like a puzzle piece. I danced like David. I started like a touchdown to a gambler that wins him his 7-pick, whatever you call them, parlay. I wasn't dancing like David naked. I was dancing like David. I was jumping up and down. Wow. I'm like, God was so beautiful at that point when that snap goes in there and there's a connection of like, oh my God, I just saw. You know what I mean? So anyway, I danced like David, except for the nudity part. Oh, it was so much fun. It felt so good. So yes, please try to debunk it. Give me a critique that says, no, Nanya, it says here in Matthew 21:8, right here. This was this was this was back in January. Okay, I want to hear that. I want to know the actual critique, the scriptural critique. The the template I used for the first spring event known as Passover, Matzah Fest, Feast of Unleavened Bread. The template I used for that is Exodus 12. And no, you don't put blood on the doorposts anymore. That was in Exodus 12. It says that was a token. It's like a one-time use, like you put a token in a machine, or a pinball machine, or you put a token to get onto a ride. It's a one-time user thing. A rainbow, the token in Hebrew, the word token is also used to describe the rainbow. It was a token, a one-time use or thing. The rainbow is exactly the same no matter where it is. It's a token of his covenant that he will not destroy the world again by water. So yeah, please critique. I hope the chart was. I hope you could see it, but don't be overwhelmed by it with all the numbers on it. We simply read the text tonight, and it only took a few minutes. If you see these texts on here, just read through and verify for yourself. Wow, I see what he's saying. How this is a different day. I see how he's saying this is a different day. I see this aligns to this day. Okay, but if you have a problem with the dates, go to Exodus 12 for that reference, for that template. And we come up with the most important thing in the whole wide world. We come up with a Last Supper of the 10th going into the 11th. And if the Last Supper is the literal first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, Matzah Fest, Passover, capital P, small p, Aviv 10, this kills Roman Catholicism. Their core, it's the Eucharist on Aviv 15, unleavened bread. They say it was a Passover meal, the Passover Seder, Aviv 15. Oh, you had a question on what happened when Jesus was arrested after the Last Supper? He was definitely arrested on the 11th. If the Last Supper was at nighttime, the 11th, definitely at sunrise on the 11th, he was arrested. Am I saying he was imprisoned for 4 days? Yes. I am saying he was imprisoned for 4 days, 3 days, 3 days, 11 to 12 to 13 to 14. He was imprisoned 3 days and 3 nights. Oh my God. Oh my God. And then executed, of course, on the 14th. But like Sticky pointed out years ago, I said, if he was arrested on the 14th, the morning of the 14th, and he was in the grave, properly anointed burial by Nicodemus and Joseph of Arimathea, in the grave before sundown, okay? Sunrise, arrested, sundown, in the grave properly, the stone rolled in front of it. He went to Ananias, Caiaphas, Pilate, Herod, Pilate, the scourging, the 14 stages of the cross going to the cross, Simeon helping him carry the cross, Simeon. The same guy at his circumcision, the same prophet Simeon at his circumcision, Simon, who was told, you will not die until you see the salvation of the Lord. The salvation of the Lord was not at his circumcision. The salvation of the Lord was at the cross. Simeon was told, you will not die till you see the salvation of the Lord. He was also told, which would be like a lifetime thing, he was additionally told, hey, go to the temple on this day. Going to the temple on that day was Jesus' circumcision when he was 8 days old. Simon, seeing him, says, let now thy servant die. Now let thy servant die. Let thy servant Jesus die now when he's 8 days old, because I have seen his salvation, the cross. Right? Now let your servant die. Because then he tells Mary, he says, you're going to be pierced too. Signifying by what Jesus' blood is going to be pierced. He was already dead when he was pierced, but no, his hands were pierced and his feet, and when he was in his head with the thorns were pierced. But those, they will mourn for the one they pierced the Father at the golden calf in Kadesh Barnea, when the Father knew that he would have to give up the Son. The Son was Spirit made flesh. To be made flesh, the Spirit is going to have to die. God is going to have to put him in Mary. And then he's going to get the Spirit of God again as any normal man. But at John the Baptist's baptism of repentance, he's going to get a bunch of the Holy Spirit, and he's going to do nothing but prophesy and speak only the words of the Father. Moses messed up on speaking the words of the Father. The first thing he messed up was he did not tell the people to set bounds around the mountain. He told people not to come against their wives. God calls them back up to the mountain and says, hey, go get thee down. He calls them up to the mountain to tell them, go get down and tell the people to set bounds around the mountain. And Moses says, I did. And he says, no, go get thee down. This is at the end of Exodus 19, because it says, And Moses went down and spoke to the people. Okay, it doesn't really say he eventually did tell them. But when he misspoke at first, he did not. God said, go down, tell the people to set bounds, tell them to get ready against the third day, wash their clothes, sanctify themselves. Moses goes down, tell them to wash themselves, get them sanctify themselves, be ready against the third day. And he does not tell them to set bounds around the mountain. He tells them, do not come against your wives. So when he goes, he gets called back up to the mountain, and God says, no, get thee down. Tell them to set bounds around the mountain. And Moses says, I did. He says, I did. And God says, no, get thee down. And Moses went down and he spoke to the people. But then that ends Exodus 19. Exodus 20 starts, and God said, I am the Lord thy God that brought you out of the furnace. He doesn't say that in Exodus 20, but you shall have no other gods before me. He shouts down the 10 commands. It's too loud. The people say, Moses, you go up there and we'll do it. So Moses goes up there and comes back down and writes it all down. The 10 commandments plus what he heard when he was up there. Writes it all down, sprinkles blood on the people, 1 million people, blood on what he wrote down, blood on the altar. Takes that back up to God. The fifth, that was the 6th time back up there. Takes it back up with 70 elders, and they have a 7-day marriage feast. Not a marriage like we're getting married, a marriage of a contract. We wrote it down in blood. We wrote it down and sprinkled blood on it, sprinkled blood on us. We said all what the Lord says we will do. We're bringing that back up to God. That's our blood covenant. It's done. There's no 10 commandments on tablets yet. There's no Levitical priesthood system yet. There's no sacrificial system yet. There's no tabernacle yet. There's not even the tablets written in stone the first time or the second time yet. The blood covenant is the 10 commandments written on those, but that's the blood covenant at Mount Sinai. This was Moses' idea to do the blood covenant, the blood part of the blood covenant. God didn't say, go take blood from these bulls that are being sacrificed for a burnt offering. God didn't say that. That was up to Moses. That's another thing he messed up. I don't want to say he messed up. Good gracious alive. It was all part of the plan. But that was Moses. That's why the Last Supper is so important. The blood of Jesus represents life. You don't drink the blood. It has the life in it. Why are you drinking blood on the Last Supper? Because the wine was changed to blood? They took a communal sip of a cup. They each didn't have a cup. They took a communal sip. He says this is the blood of the new covenant. Oh, he said this is my blood, but this is my blood. He's speaking the words of the Father. Moses had blood of bulls, but the Father's blood is the blood of life. There is no blood of bulls signifying death to the offender. His blood is a sip of wine. A sip of wine, not a sip of blood. His blood covenant is a sip of wine, not the blood of bulls sprinkled on you with a toothbrush. Or however he did it. Hyssop and water. Hyssop, water, and blood. He sprinkled on the people, the water, so that the blood would not coagulate. Gallons and gallons of blood. 1 million people. It took them all day. Sprinkle hyssop, water, and blood. What came out? What was at the cross? Hyssop on the vinegar. What was poked in his side? What came out of his side? Blood and water. Well, that's because the oxygenation when somebody gets crucified, the oxygenation of the blood produces water and blood at a point near their lung, where if you were to get poked in the side, blood and water would spew out. Yeah, we're good on that. But also at the blood covenant, the original blood covenant, he's renewing in his blood at the cross, right? Don't drink the blood. Do not drink the blood. Paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs. This is my blood. Oh my God, he's going to drink his own blood. The blood of the covenant. Oh, thank God it's just wine. Because before he said, you're going to have to eat my flesh and drink my blood. My flesh is food indeed. I was that manna back in the wilderness. You're going to have to drink my blood. Did he say my blood is drink indeed? I don't know. He probably did, but if his audience was Pharisees, and he's saying to them, "You're going to have to eat my flesh and drink my blood." Excuse me for picking my nose. It's more of a scratch than a booger. It's not a. It's more of a. We're just doing. Don't forget, at Mount Sinai, at the blood covenant, when they made the golden calf and broke that blood covenant, they were all to die. Every last seed of Abraham was going to die and break the promise. At the golden calf and at Kadesh Barnea, by the way, a year and a half later. But at the golden calf, what happened at the golden calf with the golden calf when Moses finally saw the golden calf and he had the tablets in his hand? He broke the testament. They're called testaments because it's a like a last will and testament. If it's a blood covenant, here's the Ark of the Testament, the last will and testament. You are not going to look at this unless somebody has broken it. If somebody breaks the law, you go to the law to learn about the law to see if they broke it so that all mouths can be stopped. It's the same with the 10 Commandments. You're not under them unless you've broken them. And at Moses' time, at the blood signifying death, if you broke one of them or all of them, you were to die. What, experientially, ultimately, positionally? Who cares? It's a death and you don't want that, right? Right. I lost my train of thought. So anyway, this chart, I wanted to try to hit it up with the camera thing tonight. I hope it worked out. Oh, I should have kept up on my comments, man. My comments. Oh, I'm going to run out of StreamYard time. So I wanted to get that chart. It's not of my doing. It's of my doing. I thought I would just see if it fit together. I thought I would check it out. I thought I would check it out. Oh, the Gospels were not written chronologically. Why does Matthew say on the morrow? Now in the morning. Why does John specifically say now then Jesus, 6 days before the Passover? That sounds darn tootin' specific. Chronology, yeah, you know what I mean. Anyway, I wanted to get that out there before my StreamYard stuff. But we wanted to test the microphone, so yeah, I hope this went good. Prayers to anybody, excuse me, that is freezing. It's been 7 below for 8 days here in Omaha. It finally got up to 9 today. This today, and it got up to 20 today. It was 9 yesterday. Got up to 9 degrees yesterday, 20 degrees today, and then I think 25 is supposed to get to 25 or something tomorrow. Pipes freezing. People, I don't know if people are dying, but I know that if I was not blessed with the heat that I have from my stove, when it's 7 below, wind chill minus 15, whatever, it's called a 4-burner night. I put on all 4 burners. And don't worry, you're not going to die of carbon monoxide poisoning if you make sure your gas stove that you're using to heat your apartment with is the flames are blue. Any orange in the flame means there's oxygen, and you will get that on your burners. If there's just a little piece of something, it'll make that the gas, the blue gas turn orange. And you want to flick that little. There might be something you might want to just clean that off real quick. But as long as you've got blue flames, they run propane forklifts in enclosed warehouses because the exhaust is not has no CO carbon monoxide in it. I've been doing this for years and years, so don't be afraid on that. But yes, let's please have some good thoughts, some prayers for people that are cold, suffering from the cold, not just they are cold, but they're actually so cold they are suffering from it. There are times where you can't seem to get warm when you're really cold. There are times where you want to just give up on life, or you're just obnoxious to your entire family, or it directly affects your health and you die. Regardless, just have a good thought for the people that are cold. I'm going to see if I can catch up on my comments here and get away from. Oh, where are we at? Stay safe. Oh, I think Sherry left. Yeah, stereo. Well, Sherry was here. Man, I can't believe you watched this, Sherry. You're cray. Sticky, when I'm awake. Good night, Sticky. I'll be studying my Exodus Torah tablet. Oh, yeah. He has Sticky follows a guy, Nichols, Ross Nichols. who has this Torah, Exodus Torah tablet. And what's genius, oh, Helen is here too? Oh, Helen, oh my goodness. Hi, Helen. It's, what's wrong with this Torah tablet, Oh, the genius behind it. So guess what we do, since we did with this Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, we did the same thing with Torah. We did the same thing with the first 5 books of Moses. Can you believe that? I put them side by side, and we know the chronology of the wilderness. The second set of tablets weren't given until 39 and a half years later. What? Yeah. Put them all together. Oh, I read Exodus. Okay. Yeah, even within Exodus, he goes up the mountain with the 70, delivers the blood covenant that he had written down. They have a 1-week wedding festival halfway up the mountain, and then he goes and then he goes into the smoke for a week, and then for 33 more days. It says for 40 days total. It says he went into the fire for 40 days. And in there, he's learning how, this is after the blood covenant written down, he's getting told how to build the tabernacle. And he says, so that I can dwell with you, I can have a sanctuary with you. And he also anoints the priest and institutes the Day of Atonement. This is this is everything before the golden calf. After the blood covenant, prior to the golden calf, he institutes the tabernacle, how to build it, and how to do sacrifices for the priests to anoint them, but not sin sacrifices, not leper law sacrifices, not law of burnt, law of sin, law of trespass, none of those. It was a sanctuary for him to live in. And Aaron was the priests that were anointed were to go in there once a year for the Day of Atonement. What? This is all before the golden calf. It's the only part of the added law that is prior to the added law. The added law came after the golden calf. The commandments, the covenant, were before the golden calf. Anyway, long story short, the golden calf. Moses says when he came back down, saw the golden calf, broke those tablets he just got, the testimonies. He took their sin, even the golden calf, and stamped it and burnt it and ground it even as fine as powder. And yes, you can do this with gold. Gold is indestructible. You can pound it down to paper. Wait, you can pound. Anyway, he pounded it down to even to dust, cast the gold into the water that came out of the mountain, and made the people drink of it. They literally had to eat the gold calf. Jesus saying to the Pharisees, you are going to have to eat my flesh and drink my blood unless you want to see the kingdom of God. He's talking about the golden calf reference. The drink my blood is my type of blood covenant, which we find out later is just wine, not Jesus's real blood. It was just a sip of wine. That's my blood covenant. So yes, when I put Exodus, Deuteronomy, Leviticus, Numbers all together, you find out that God is long suffering. God is long on the nasty things these people did over and after the golden calf, even after the golden calf, at Massa, at Taberah, at Kibroth Hattaavah, at Kadesh Barnea, where they rebelled against the Lord. When he said, go up there and take the land, they rebelled and said, no, it is a land flowing with milk and honey, but they're too big for us. And Joshua and Aaron and Caleb said, no, let's go up there. Their defenses are down. And they went to stone them. And then God said, stand again, as he said at the golden calf, stand back, Moses. Let me wipe them out as one man. I will start over with you, Moses. I will disinherit them. I will blot out their name from under heaven. If you don't think that's serious talk, think again. At that time, they then added the law. Notice how I didn't say covenant. When you read Jeremiah 31:31, the new covenant, the law is written on your heart, not the covenant. Look at Leviticus, the very beginning of Leviticus. These are the words that God spoke to Moses out of the tabernacle. That's after the golden calf. Take that entire book of Leviticus, tear it out, and put it on your heart. Deuteronomy, these are the words Moses spoke to on this side of Jordan, and before going over 40 years after. You get Deuteronomy in Hebrew literally means added words. You can take the entire book of Deuteronomy and rip it out, put it on your heart. You've got commands only to follow. There's 10. They're not that hard. You naturally do 8 of them without even blinking an eye. The fourth one of 9 of them that you have a problem. The one that your stumbling block is the Sabbath. If you think the Sabbath that you're going to get murdered, going to be executed by Pharisees for picking up sticks, you're mistaken. It's a wrong reading. These picking up sticks was because they're going back to Egypt, where they had to get their sticks for the bricks on their own time. They had a Sabbath under Pharaoh. They had one day off. How do we know that? Because Moses said, we want to go 3 days journey to make a sacrifice. That's 3 days there and 3 days back. We've got a day off already. This is what you do when you take a vacation from your regular 9-to-5 job, Monday through Friday. You're going to take a vacation, you take Monday through Friday off because you have Saturday, Sunday off, and you back them up. So if you're going to take 6 days off, Moses, 7 maybe with the day of sacrifice, but you have your first day is going to be your Sabbath that you're going to be leaving on the weekend, and then you got 3 days journey, make your sacrifice, 3 days journey back. You got another Sabbath, and then after that, you go back to work for Pharaoh. Pharaoh says you got too much time on your hands. Go get your own straw on your day off, or at night, or in the morning. So when this guy is talking about gathering sticks under Moses, it's not, oh, he was gathering sticks, and that's a serious offense on the Sabbath. I better not do that in 2025. I better not flick on a light switch. I better not start my car. No, he's talking about he gathered sticks like it was an example. The whole point of the gathering sticks was it's an example of how not to come presumptuously to the Lord. It was a presumptuous act, coming there as if, I don't care about your Sabbath. Look at me. I will gather straw to make bricks. Excuse me. What about kindling a fire? Kindling a fire is sandwiched between 4 chapters on God telling Moses how to build the tabernacle, and 4 chapters on Moses telling the people on how to build their tabernacle. Of course, he's going to say, do not kindle a smelting furnace. To build this tabernacle, if you kindle a fire, if you kindle the furnace on the Sabbath to get it ready to smelt on Sunday, you're building on my Sabbath to build my tabernacle? No, we're going to put you to death. That does not. And what about going out of the house? Going out of the house, you'd be put to death if you go out of the house or whatever. No, that was regarding the manna, way prior to Mount Sinai. When remember, there's 2 quail incidences. The second one, that came out their nose for 30 days. They got quail. The first one, that's because they asked, who's going to give us meat? Okay, but some years earlier, on their way to Mount Sinai, they said, Lord, we're hungry, we want meat. And he gave them quail for a day. But when the quail left that day, there was manna on the ground. And for 40 years, they were able to get that manna. But the rules are, you pick twice as much on Friday, and then you can heat it up if you want, or whatever. You can just fast too if you want on Saturday. But there's not going to be any on Saturday. So regarding going out of your house, he's specifically talking about for the manna. Okay, don't even go out there presumptuously for the manna. That's not going to be there. He didn't use it. He speaks of the examples where the people kept the food overnight and it bred worms, but that wasn't a death penalty, a killer to why you there's a stumbling block to you doing the Sabbath. You think it's so restrictive and oppression. It was made for you to take your time off from your Walmart job. Cops have to work, nurses have to work, baby formula has to be heated up, otherwise it's poison. What's the other part of the Sabbath? Taking a day off. You get your work done in 6 days. So if this cop has to work on the Sabbath, he better be working 6 days on a different schedule. That nurse, you're heating up. You can do good on the Sabbath. I read that because Jesus said if your bull falls in a ditch, so yeah, you can do life savings. No, that's not a rule. That's an assumption made. He's given examples. He healed on the Sabbath. He healed a man's withered hand. That was not life-threatening. Oh, it could be life-threatening because he wasn't able to work, and now he can work. It was not a blood. You know what I mean. Let's have some good thoughts for the people in the cold, and let me try to get caught up on these comments before my StreamYard runs out. Oh, staying warm. This is an interesting. I've always just followed Jesus' teachings. Oh, you're so kind to say that. Helen, yes, very. Oh, Helen agreed. You guys are crazy. Don't listen to me, man. I got, I don't know. I don't know. But boy, thank you all so much for chilling for a minute, man. I wanted to try to get that horizontal view of my chart, the Holy Spirit chart. I'm trying to do this whole works of the law equals circumcision. But boy, A's A apostrophe S, however you say that. Oh my goodness. A's philosophy. It came in earlier and gave me some inspiration to actually try to put that chart on a StreamYard video. So I hope this did it. And thank you all for stopping by. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Hopefully we'll see you again tomorrow night if I get some more StreamYard time. Blessings.